I'm Neil from the Starling Tribune, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the one you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual host. Check out all the other great podcasts at gonnageek.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Better Podcasting, a show where we talk about podcast tips, tools, and best practices to help you succeed with your podcast. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we podcast purely out of the love and fun of it. Podcasting is our hobby, and we recognize that it's yours too. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. Here's your host for the show, Stephen John Drew and Stargate Pioneer.
Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Better Podcasting. I am the generic Stephen J, and with me today is the router-troubled Stargate Pioneer.
Yeah, first, Facebook has me in their sights. They're now my nemesis, and now my brand new Wi-Fi router takes a gigantic hit. So, yes, the podcast gods are not being kind to Stargate Pioneer this week, but guess what? We are cool. We're fine. This is Friday night. We're back on our regularly scheduled time, minus the technical difficulties, and we are excited to have this podcast this week to talk to you about some great stuff.
Absolutely. And we are indeed streaming this to geeks.live like we always do. So please check out the calendar there. We're also to facebook.com/betterpodcasting. We do stream it out there. We are not at twitter.com/betterpod, but maybe in the future one day. And you can always email us at podcast@betterpodcasting.com. Now, before we do jump into things here, such as talking today a little bit further on our 3-part arc on planning 2017, and maybe, just maybe, we'll finally wrap up that Shure SM7B versus Audio-Technica BP40 discussion, and maybe get to a little Better Podback. We are going to remind you that we have a contest going on right now that you can enter. That's right, you can enter for a brand new pair of Audio-Technica ATH M40X headphones. These headphones are fantastic. SP uses them every day. He loves them. He is obsessed with them. In fact, I believe that he actually sleeps with them at night. Not these very pair of headphones, the ones you'll be getting, but the same model.
Yes, I do. I cuddle with my headphones every single night. I have to have them embraced in me in order to go to sleep. It's my little cuddly blanket, my little stress simulator, whatever. I got to have them on. I can't have them on my head. I actually have to hug them while I go to bed. And it gets kind of messy with the cord, so I have to take the cord off, which these do have a detachable cord, by the way, so that's great. Also, great for studio monitoring, so you get a nice, I would want to say flat response, but I think the bass has been a little bit enhanced, which is good because then your ears don't get entirely fatigued. Yeah. But we have this, we have bought it. We're not sponsored by Audio-Technica at all, and we have bought it to give away to you. And there are certain things that you have to do in order to get this. So first of all, you have to tell us, get a hold of us at BetterPod on Facebook, at Better Podcasting, or contest at betterpodcasting.com, and tell us what's your favorite moment from 2016 in podcasting. One doesn't have to be your podcast, could be somebody else's podcast. You could be listening, it could be recording, it could be producing. It doesn't really matter. What is your favorite moment in podcasting from 2016? And then how do you monitor your show now? Is it through headphones? Is it through the Apple earbuds? Is it through Bluetooth? Is it from speakers? So let us know that. And then, of course, plug your show if you have one currently, or where people can find you. And that is what we would like to know.
Absolutely. So please do get that into us. And again, as SP said, we are not sponsored by Audio-Technica. While they may not be the headphones that I use, I do indeed own a pair myself. And I use them usually on the road. They're my secondary headphones. They're good. I like them. I think they're great headphones. And we think that you'll like them too. So we're going to give those away, and we look forward to running this through the end of 2016.
And we will give it away on our very first podcast in 2017. So the cutoff is the midnight December 31st, 2016. If your calendar, if your phone, if whatever says 2017, nope, you're wrong. And you have missed the boat. But we will have more giveaways in 2017. This will be our last giveaway of 2016.
All right, let's go ahead and move into our main topic.
Let's do it.
All right, so as you know, last time we started our 3-part arc on planning 2017, and we talked about a couple of different things, primarily hardware and services. Today, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're going to talk about software and show structure. What do we mean by that? Well, let's go ahead and dive into it and start off with the fact that, you might end up finding that as you come into the new year, you are already in a certain habit. You're a creature of habit. You're using a certain flow to edit, to record, and it's just because you're used to it. You know that this is a routine that works for you, but maybe you have some ambitions a little bit different. For example, maybe you're using a piece of audio editing software that is working for you, but you have your sight set on something else, maybe something a little bit more paid, a little bit more functional. But the problem is you have all of your templates set up within your current software. This is something that happens all the time. And what I'm alluding to is a lot of people, when they podcast, they start off by using Audacity. It's a great free piece of software. But as they continue on, they're willing to consider paying for a piece of software that might make things a little bit easier. If you add noise reduction, if you add enhancements such as leveling, compression, things like that, in Audacity, you have to do a lot of that pretty much manually. And some of the other software, the way it works is you go and you put in your settings to your template. So then it's basically hitting one button to save and apply it all. For example, Audition. So that's something that some people are wanting to do that, but they just can't find the time to rebuild all of their audio templates because it's a lot. If you got an intro and outro, or you've got your stuff just set up just perfectly, and yet you want to find and make that time. Well, maybe during your downtime at the end of 2016, you want to plan to change up and actually make that happen and pull the trigger on that software change finally. And that is something that I actually recently went through from the video side of things. Myself, I switched video editing, and I can tell you it was a pain to redo my templates, and I wish I had just waited to the end of the year during my break to do it.
Yeah, just last night I was doing a Starling Tribune podcast, and Chris normally does the video editing for that. So he'd slip me the templates and everything. So I thought, hey, look, I can go in really quick and I could add it as a separate scene in OBS Studio. Not so much. It was a little bit more difficult than I had hoped it was going to be. Templates didn't fit what I had just correctly, and I didn't set up OBS correctly with the audio. So these things need some time to happen, even if you're familiar with the software, if you're going to make some changes, if you're going to add a show or whatever. So the holiday time is a great time when you're having a downtime in order to take care of this stuff. But remember, you have a limited amount of time during the holidays that is downtime. You're going to want to do some rest, relaxation. You're going to want to do family or celebratory activities. So go ahead and moderate what you're going to do and make sure that you are giving yourself enough time to deal with this sort of thing. So don't schedule too much on your plate. But templates are a great thing to do. And like I said, I just did it last night with Starling Tribune, and I wish I would have had a day or two to actually mess around with it ahead of actually recording a live podcast.
Yeah. So if you're making any software changes, it might be not a bad idea to actually do that after the fact, during the break, when you don't have the pressure of trying to get through your regular weekly routine. Another thing that you might want to consider as well is your graphics. are your graphics in need of refreshing themselves? Well, I guess you'll have to do the refreshing, but I don't know. Maybe they're magic. Maybe they're magical graphics. Some people are looking to do this because they don't want to get stale. They think it's time to rejuvenate their image a little bit, or maybe they've just done something else. You know, they're going to launch a new website or something like that, and they want it to better match. Well, when you think about the graphics that you use, they're in your RSS feed, they're in your actual embedding of your file, they're probably on every other directory service that you've ever submitted yourself to. Maybe you've got a profile somewhere that you write underneath that has an avatar that's like that. Refreshing your graphics is not an easy thing to do. Your Facebook page, your Google Plus page, right? There's all of these places that probably have your imagery as it is, and it's not a simple task to change it over. Trust me, I know this. I know a thing or two about this. And again, if you have some downtime and you're planning on making a change, maybe you want to plan to have that happen during your downtime or going into the new year, because new year is a great time for a new face.
That's right. And for Better Podcasting, we've already decided it's contractually obligated now that in 2017, Better Podcasting is going to be rebranded as Better Podcasting with Stargate Pioneer. That's the whole title. That's what it's going to be. And starting in 2017, it's going to be that way. It's like Daniel Jackson in Stargate, and he actually had his own billing as the show went on in order to keep him there. And that's what's going to happen. So just stay tuned for that in 2017. The magical graphic will change with Better Podcasting.
You know, I'm just glad that I actually don't have to physically change my face, because I thought that was where you were going, because, you know, we're talking about a new face, and I thought that you actually wanted me to get rid of my face because it is ugly. So,
well, yeah, you can do all that cosmetic surgery with that free medical care you got up in Canardia.
But no, seriously, it is a lot more work than you think with graphics. So if you are thinking about doing it, 2017 or your downtime for 2017 is a great time to do that. The other thing is maybe, you know, your podcast itself, the audio elements within it might need a little bit of refreshing. You might have a certain intro that's getting a little long in the tooth, or maybe you have some wonderful bumps that you use in between your segments that are getting a little bit old, a little stale. That's, again, another big undertaking, isn't it, SP?
It is. When you run a podcast with many different segments and you segregate the segments with bumps, they start to get old after a while for you as the producer. So when they start getting old for you as a producer, you're like, the listener is probably getting tired of this right now. So yeah, in order to go through some of the massive amounts of audio available on royalty-free databases, we use Pond 5 and other people use audiojungle.net. There's other places to do it. We've had people on the network using Competent.com with Kevin MacLeod. Anywhere where you can get royalty-free music, it's not like reading. You can't like search it like you can with Google. You actually have to go in and listen to this stuff, and it takes hours sometimes. So yeah, that's just what it is. So you just plan for it. Take the time where you have in the holidays, if you have time off, and then come back at it in 2017 with brand new sound.
Yeah, the only other thing that I should mention in here, since we're talking about music, we mentioned talking about Pond 5. Pond 5 is usually our go-to recommendation, but I don't know, SPN might have to change that a little bit. We've had like 3 reports in the last month of people seeing random commercials with our wonderful Better Podcasting theme. So apparently we just have good taste.
We do. So a bank, Camping World, and then some random advertisements in the store. You know how they do those little advertisements in the store with the video now with a little monitor in the aisle or whatever? Somebody sent us a video. It was Suncast actually sent us a video of our theme being used in whatever store it was, Target, grocery store, whatever. So we've literally had 3 reports of our music being used in other places, which I think they're all copying the mastermind that Stargate Pioneer is with his sidekick, Stephen J.
Absolutely. Better Podcasting starring Stargate Pioneer with special guest. Actually, special is too much. With guest.
With monkey flipping the switch producer, Stephen J.
Sure, why not? So what other things might you want to actually consider doing during your break? Well, this is one here that a lot of people plan to do, and they just don't know when do I pull the trigger. Maybe you want to look at making a change to the actual show structure itself. You know, it's all well and good to end up refreshing those superficial things, or as Mike Holmes says, the lipstick and mascara. One of my favorite Mike Holmes expressions. But content is king. And if you are getting a little bit dry or a little bit old with your content, maybe you need to change it up. And that's a hard task to do because you're so used to doing it another way. And I think it's a great time is when if you have some downtime to plan on afterwards coming in with a new structure. And the reason why is because then you can practice a little bit and get used to it a little bit. You know, you don't maybe necessarily need to do full shows that aren't going to air, but it's not a bad thing. Maybe you can solicit some feedback, do a little demo, send it off to a friend, ask them for some feedback during that downtime. Because your gut's going to tell you to go back to the old way. It's the way that you know. It's the way you're comfortable with. And so if you can have any downtime to actually get in the routine of this new habit, you're going to come back running rather than crawling.
Yeah, getting used to a new way of doing things is definitely going to take some time, and you're not going to improve unless you try certain things. And this is a perfect time to do it coming up in the holiday season. As we're recording this, next week is Thanksgiving. So it starts the holidays, but we're more talking about the last couple of weeks of the year that people normally take off. Now, if you're starting your podcast, as we alluded to before, go back and listen to episodes 1 through 6. We run through how to start your hobby podcast. Basically, we're not going to reiterate that, but this is also a perfect time to get to know Audacity, get to know your hardware, get to know your microphone, get to know your graphics program if you're actually creating your own graphics. So perfect time to take some time and do it. And once again, make sure you're actually thinking about what you want to do and how much time it's going to take, and actually schedule that time in. That's what we're talking about here.
For sure. So these are a few other things that we wanted to briefly touch on about things that you might want to consider with your downtime in 2017. We do have one other segment in our 3-part arc, which is next week, which is podcast infrastructure and promotion planning. This is a bit of a bigger arc, and we want to make sure that we save enough time for that. And there is a lot within those couple of words there that we want to hit on, and find that out in the next episode. But as always, maybe you have something that you have planned to do during your 2017 planning, during your downtime at the holiday season of 2016, please get in touch with us. Tell us what you're planning on doing, because we'd love to share it during this 3-part arc so that people can hear what you've got planned. Please email podcast@betterpodcasting.com or facebook.com/betterpodcasting, twitter.com/betterpod. Any of these ways, we want to hear from you. How are you planning on spending your time?
Looking forward to hearing from you too.
Absolutely. All right, should we get into a very exciting download?
It's exciting for us because we're hobby podcasters. We like our hardware and we like to tinker. I can't wait to hear what's coming next.
All right.
Welcome to this week's Better Podcasting Download.
All right. As I teased, this has been a long time coming. It's been a couple of months that I've been actually doing this. That's right. To reiterate and remind you, for a couple months, I was using the wonderful star of this program, Stargate Pioneer's Shure SM7B, that he managed to get brought up to me, because that's the presence he's got. Is he just goes around to other people on the Gonna Geek Network and he's like, hey, do my bidding. Take this to Steven. And
I like to take care of the little people on the network.
And so he did manage to get me his very Shure SM7B. Still smells like Stargate Pioneer. Sort of a weird combination of bacon and mayonnaise somehow. But anyways, he did ship it off to me, and I was using it for a couple of months. And this microphone, we got one. As you heard, maybe a couple episodes ago, we had one person write in and say, hey, I noticed Steven's using a different microphone. And then I decided, it's almost time to wrap it up. and that feedback really encouraged me to finally wrap up my test. So last episode, halfway through the episode, I ended up switching out my microphone halfway through the show. I used the Shure SM7B for the first half. For the Better Podcasting Download and the Better Podback, I ended up using the Audio-Technica BP40. And again, we're going to do a little bit of a comparison, and I'm going to tell you a bit of my thoughts on it after using the Shure SM7B in full function, both this podcast and the GonnaGeek.com show, and how I feel it compares to the Audio-Technica BP40. Now, before we get too much into that, let's back up here a minute. I said we had one person tell me that I was using a different microphone. So it's just sort of reiterating the fact that a lot of times people talk about all these different gear and these different microphones, but if you have a good quality microphone, the difference between them can be very subjective and also not that big of a deal, right?
No, if any of the microphones that we recommend for use with hobby podcasters are fine. If you have an AT2005 and Audio-Technica AT2005, you are fine. Yeah. If you want to increase your live broadcast sound and add a processor and a larger diaphragm dynamic cardioid microphone, that's good too. There are different microphones for every voice as well. So we've said it before. If you have the opportunity to try different microphones, go and try different microphones. I will say that in this particular case, Stephen had been lusting over the Shure SM7B for his entire life, really, ever since he saw Michael Jackson use it with Thriller. And he had the opportunity to get the Audio-Technica BP40 on a demo, and he liked it so much he purchased it. So that is how he got that one versus the Shure SM7B. I bought the Shure SM7B as a Christmas gift. That was bought for me, really, last year. And I tried it out. I tried this one out, the Electro Voice RE320. I like the Electro Voice RE320 better, but I guarantee you they're both just fine microphones. So since I wasn't using it anymore, that is why Steven had his chance to try it. And that microphone has made its rounds throughout the United States as well. It's a fine microphone, by the way. But so any microphone is fine. Steven has done some tests. He's come to his conclusion on which microphone he likes better. Steven, why don't you get to it?
Absolutely. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to make you go back and jump through the previous episode. I've actually prepared a few different clips here, and we'll start off with one that compares a section of the Shure SM7B first, and then a section from the podcast last week that had the Audio-Technica BP40. So let's just go ahead and play it for you right now. We almost canceled, actually, but at the last minute, we did decide to do this. So wanted to share that with you. All right, well, that's taking us to the end of the episode today. Before we wrap up, we want to remind everybody, because we talked about... So there you go. There's your clip from last week. I'll do one more time for you just so you can hear it, because they are a little bit different, and I know it's the first time you're hearing it, so let's play it one more time. We almost canceled, actually, but at the last minute, we did decide to do this. So wanted to share that with you. All right, well, that's taking us to the end of the episode today. Before we wrap up, we want to remind everybody, because we talked about... So yes, that was the Shure SM7B followed by the Audio-Technica BP40. And the way that was my ideal Shure SM7B settings that I found via 2 months of playing with it on my DBX 286. And that is indeed, it's going into a DBX 286 with a bunch of different settings enabled. So it had an enhancer on and some other things. And so it was the settings that I found to be the best for my voice after months of using the Shure SM7B compared to the same thing, but for the BP40 with the settings that I found for the BP40. And this is something that's been split. Like I said, we had one person say that they thought that I sounded a little bit better on the BP40. We've had a few people live say that they thought that the SM7B was a little better. I'm going to save my comments until I play a couple other clips. First one that I want to line up for you here right now is essentially a straight recording with a little star on there. And what I mean by that is I'm using my DBX 286 preamp to give the gain that I need for both microphones, but I have the rest of it shut off. So the compressor, the enhancer, everything else is all shut off. So it's essentially just acting as a preamp. And the reason I have to do this is because the Shure SM7B is a huge hog. And if I was to just do it directly into my board or the H6, I might not have very good results. So I needed to use a preamp that can give enough gain. And so that's what I'm going to play for you. First here is a clip. Again, the Shure SM7B first, and then the second will be the Audio-Technica BP40, and then it will be a recording of that with nothing else in there other than a bit of quick cleanup, but it's just straight gain, no compression, nothing like that. So let's go ahead and play that. My name is Stephen John Drew, and this is the Shure SM7B going directly into the DBX286 with the process bypass enabled. My name is Stephen John Drew, and this is the Audio-Technica BP40 going into the DBX286 with the process bypass enabled. All right, so again, that was just essentially a fairly raw recording of both microphones. And the last one that I want to play for you before we comment a little bit on the microphone is what I just recorded, except in post-production, I have gone and I have applied a plugin called Gmax, which is essentially compression, because a lot of people do apply some level of compression in post-production, whether it is through a distributed purchased piece of software or a plugin that doesn't call it compression, but it's essentially doing compression. There's a bunch of ways that people often do compression on their podcast, and so let's just play that for you right now. My name is Stephen John Drew, and this is the Shure SM7B going directly into the DBX286 with the process bypass enabled. My name is Stephen John Drew, and this is the Audio-Technica BP40 going into the DBX286 with the process bypass enabled. All right, so those were the tests there, the 3 tests back to back. You've heard it in 3 different ways, and I'll start off by giving SP the floor here to give his feedback. Go ahead, SP.
Okay, I'm just going to cut to the chase. I like the sound of the BP40 better. I will admit the Shure SM7B has a certain clarity to it, maybe a flat response across the frequency band. But as for a broadcaster, I'll take the BP40 over the Shure SM7B. It depends on what you're trying to do. Like if you're trying to do a certain voiceover, if you're trying to sing or something like that, you might not want to have this type of broadcast microphone sound. So like I said, every voice is different, every situation is different. So trying different microphones is best for everybody, but I like the deep tones that are brought out by the BP40. I like that certain kind of radio voice sound that is brought forward with the BP40, and that's even with the processor, as Stephen called it, off. And I like it better, but that's just the long and the short of it. I like the way the BP40 sounds better than the Shure SM7B. Now ask me again in a couple years, and I might say, oh my gosh, I can't stand his voice like that anymore. I want the Shure SM7B.
Well, let's be honest, you're going to just say I can't stand his voice in a couple years, regardless of the microphone that I'm using.
Well, the key is not to have you around in a couple of years. That's what the start of the 2017 Better Podcasting starring Stargate Pioneers about. We're just kidding about that, folks. But the microphone that he's using for today is better for me. The BP40.
Yeah, I'm on the same page on this here, which is... SP is not exaggerating. The SM7B was really my dream mic for a very, very long time. It was one that I dreamed about. I knew it was my microphone. I heard it on a bunch of different places. I thought it sounded phenomenal. Really liked it. But what I've decided that I'm pretty sure I like about this, and I'm probably going to irritate a few people within the podcasting world by saying this, is my opinion, and you hit it on the head. I think there's a clarity about the SM7B, but the BP40, as well as the Electro Voice mics that I heard, have a certain enhancement to them that I think is artificial. That's my opinion. When I've heard it on you, I've heard it on other people, there's a certain undescribable quality that I hear very distinctly on those microphones. And I believe the BB40 falls more in line with that, a certain enhancement, kind of like how when you take out of my microphone test that I did, you take the 2 Audio-Technica microphones, and again, there's almost a little enhanced sparkle sound in there compared to the rest. The rest sound fairly flat and real world, and I think that that's the case. like you said, it's that quote unquote radio quality that I think is present. And the BP40 to me ends up just sounding a little bit more full. The SM7B, I've really analyzed this a few different times. The SM7B seems to have a bit of a more clearer bottom end, but when you look at the whole picture, it just sounds like it's missing something. And I'll give you my example on how I found that and really kind of thought that was the case is every time I use the SM7B, when I came on my shows to introduce them, on this one here, I'm the first one that talks. On the GonnaGeek.com show, I'm the first one that talks. As soon as I heard myself on the SM7B in the car playing it back, I thought to myself, that's not right. And I thought to myself, that sounds like I've done something wrong in editing. And on more than one occasion, I went back to check my actual editing template to make sure I had not shut something off because it just didn't sound as full as I was used to. So that's sort of why I'm of the opinion that I think that for me, my voice, what I want out of a podcast, that quote unquote radio sound that you said, I think that I would lean towards the BP40, which makes me happy because I own the BP40, not the 7B.
That's right. And also of consideration, this is widely reported, the Shure SM7B takes a lot of gain. Steven said it before in this podcast, it's a gain hog, and you need to add clean gain to it. So if you're going straight into your mixer might or might not have enough headroom in it to add enough clean gain before it starts to get dirty. Because at some point in time, all of the preamps on the mixers, they start to get dirty as you turn them all the way up. So you're going to have to add clean gain. Now, whether that is through a preamp, like the Behringer, what do you have, the Behringer MI?
The Behringer Mini Mic 800.
800, the Mini Mic 800, or the DBX 286S, or some other, Aphex processor, enhancer, or whatever. If you have a cloud lifter or a Fed head, anything like that, you're going to need to drive that Shure SM7B.
Yes.
It's a very good microphone. It's been around for a while. It's based on the Unidyne 3 capsule. We talked about it before that went into the Shure SM58, and a lot of great people have used it. Like I mentioned before, Michael Jackson actually recorded Thriller with a Shure SM7B. So it is not a dud of a mic. It's just we like the BP40 better. And this is a lot. I'll take it back to the beginning, Steven. These mics, any of these mics, would be great for a podcaster. You just have to apply it how you want to apply it without making the sound muddy.
Absolutely. The other last thing that I want to say before we do move on from this is that the SM7B has a nice benefit to it. When you take off the back of it, and I should have done it before the show, there is two settings there. One is essentially a roll-off, which the Audio-Technica BP40 has as well. So you can roll off the lower end. But the other thing it has is it has a vocal enhancement, essentially a lift within the upper range. And by having that, this is something that I think, depending on your voice, it might give you the leg up if you are broadcasting or recording in a straight up manner where you're not applying post-processing. I'll tell you, there are episodes that I heard with the raw live recording that I did not have my settings set up right, that I thought that, the 7B excelled a little bit in my untouched version that went out to the internet. So I think that it's going to give you a little bit more flexibility than the BP40, but I'm looking at the final product. We do video, we do live, but the big thing that we put our highlights on here is the actual podcast that goes out. The audio podcast is our number one highlight on our show. And to me, once it's all edited, all cleaned up, post-processed, I consistently like the BP40 sound better than the 7B.
So basically, this whole segment was designed, in the last couple of months, were designed so that Stephen J., generic name, does not have buyer's remorse with his BP40.
I was so worried when you offered to get this to me that I was going to, because again, really, really loved the microphone. And the first time I hooked it up, I was very worried. I have a pair of pants that I've thrown out because I never want to think about them again.
That's TMI, man. Let's move on.
All right, let's move on. All right, so we did get some Better Podback this week. We ended up getting a message from Daniel J. Lewis. Isn't that right, SP?
Yeah, Daniel J. Lewis, a friend of the show, he runs his own podcast about podcasting called The Audacity to Podcast, soon to hit 300 episodes. And he's got, if you go listen to his podcast, and I recommend that you do, you will find that he has a deal now as you're going into the 300th episode that he wants you to listen to episode number 1 and critique that episode number 1. So if you ever had an opportunity to critique Daniel J. Lewis on a podcast, go ahead and do it. I've listened to his episode 1. I know what he's talking about. I'm going to go back and critique it. It's going to be fun. But in any event, you listen to our last episode as we talked about adding hardware to your podcast as the holiday sales are going on, either as gifts or you use the sales as an opportunity to buy gear that you normally might be out of your price range. And we talked about chairs that we had assessed getting. And he asked us basically what chairs were we looking at? And both Stephen and I responded. Stephen responded on Twitter with the one that he selected was a Serta Smart Layers Benson Manager chair, which was on sale. And the Smart Layers is kind of that springs that I was talking about in the last podcast that we had both assessed would probably be better for the cushioning for long term. And then I had a Real Space Impresso bonded leather high back chair in top leather. And both those links will be in the show notes to this podcast. But Daniel brought up a concern that the leather might be a little noisy for podcasters. And that might be true. I mean, but if you are thinking about having your chair for a long time, fabric might not be as durable as leather. It depends on how you treat it and what kind of leather you get, what kind of fabric you get, that sort of thing. So there's never a one size fits all scenario with chairs. Our concern was the padding because both of us have had padding issues with our chairs. So that's what we prioritize. But if you want to take a look at the whole chair, you got to take a look at squeaks and creaks within the chair itself, the durability of the fabric, the durability of the wheels, because generally they're wheeled or whatever. I mean, you could podcast on a kitchen chair, a wooden kitchen chair. You could podcast on a folding chair. It doesn't really matter, except for if you're going to do it for a while, it has to be comfortable for you. And you have to be able to sit up. You have to project from your lungs, from your diaphragm. And if you're just hunched over or whatever, it's probably not going to go well for your voice over time. But if you want to project loudly, that's the sort of thing you need. And I just wanted to bring it up because we didn't talk about the actual chairs that we had actually purchased for our replacements in the future. And I want to say thank you very much, Daniel, for listening. We really appreciate your patronage to our show.
Absolutely. The other thing before we move off of that is I did consider cloth. I actually, one of the chairs I lined up, I had actually sent to SP as cloth for two reasons. Number one, being total video aware, I found a beige chair that was cloth that I thought, okay, that's great. That'll give me more depth behind me. You know,
color.
Color, you know, thinking about the video. But then the thing that I really realized is I've talked about it before. I have some special considerations depending on, or different than SP, one of which is children that I bring down here. When the youngest is in nap, the 4-year-old comes down, we hang out, we eat things, maybe Cheetos, and maybe he's going to put his Cheetos fingers all over my chair. And so cloth is not a great option for me. Kids are messy. And, maybe I go out to get something and I come back and he's wiped his hands all over something. You don't know. So I didn't really want a chair that I'm going to be sitting there fighting with. The other thing with the cloth as well is I've seen some cloth chairs that have been used regularly and they're kind of gross to look at. So
we just got rid of a bunch of them at work. So we went with the mesh stuff at work, and mesh is better than cloth in my opinion. But yeah, cloth, there's detriments to it just as well as there's detriments to leather.
Absolutely.
The bonded leather chair that I'm using right now has started to peel, and it's been 2 years, but it's 2 years of constant use, 5 podcasts every week. So I got my money's worth out of it. I appreciate it. But again, Daniel, thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it.
And it's funny, the chairs apparently spurred the conversation because we had another comment, which was from Scott Smith, and he posted it to our Facebook wall, and he says, I can identify with the much needed chair. And that's all it was. And he posted a photo, of his chair.
My gosh.
And the chair, seriously, it's got tape on the handles. The leather is doing the peeling thing SP just talked about. It looks like there's an aftermarket support behind it. But yeah, I wanted to share this on here. And if you're watching the video side of things, you can see it. If not, go to facebook.com/betterpodcasting and look at the post by recent people. And actually, I ended up resharing it anyways, just because I thought it was fantastic. So Scott Smith, thank you for sending that. It is incredible that you still podcast with that chair. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've had some special chairs in my life that I've refused to get rid of, but if they get to that point, it's time to throw them in the bonfire, people.
Absolutely. And for you viewers and listeners, just so you know, that's the first time SP's seen that because he's not on Facebook anymore, as you know. So I made sure to hold it for his reaction right now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Facebook. I hate you too.
Well, that is taking us to the end of the show today. Before we do wrap up, I want to remind everybody that we're part of the Gonna Geek Network. The Gonna Geek Network is a network that has a bunch of great geeky content. It's something that we're just a bunch of hobbyists, actually, a bunch of hobby podcasters who enjoy podcasting about different geeky subjects. Some of them are about things like television shows. Some are even maybe about lifestyle. And we might even have a couple others that might be popping their way into the network pretty soon. But we do have a variety of great geeky content available at GonnaGeekNetwork.com. One of which is Nerd Alert News. This is the program which is done by the legendary Chris Farrell. Chris Farrell does in episode 58 talk about Bethesda making a big shift in their game review processes, or policies, I should say, about Star Trek Discovery, how they've lost a showrunner, and also how Tesla just invented a brand new game changer within solar energy. Please check out all of that in episode 58 of Nerd Alert News, available on GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And if you have a podcast that you'd like to add to the network, go to GonnaGeek.com/join.
For sure. But that is indeed the end of episode 55 of Better Podcasting. I'm Stephen J. Happy that I don't regret my purchase.
And I'm Stargate Pioneer, about to do some router shopping tomorrow.
Bye.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Better Podcasting. We want to hear from you. You can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. If you like the show, please consider giving us a 5-star review in iTunes. We encourage you to check out all of the other geeky podcasts available at GonnaGeekNetwork.com. This has been a Gonna Geek production. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next week. Here's your host for the show, Stephen John Drew and Stargate Pioneer.
Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Better Podcasting. My name is the generic Stephen J, and with me today is Stargate Pioneer. We lost SP just before we went live. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-boo. I did not realize that his call dropped.